Hey there, and welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling a topic that's got layers, like a good wedding cake, marriage. And whether you're considering taking the plunge, already knee-deep in I-do's, or just curious about what makes relationships tick, we've got some fascinating insights to share.
Absolutely. We're pulling some fascinating bits from a podcast script, actually, titled The Journey of Marriage, From Healthy Partnerships to Toxic Relationships.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a title that sets the scene, right?
Man, they're kidding. It's like they're covering the whole spectrum. And one thing that jumped out at me right away was their focus on healthy marriages over just happy ones. What do you make of that distinction?
It's subtle, but huge E. Think of it this way. Happy can be fleeting, right? It's influenced by all sorts of external factors like a good day at work or finally getting that working spot. But healthy, that speaks to the core, the DNA of the relationship. It's about having mutual respect, that deep down trust, and being able to communicate openly even when things get tough.
Okay, so it's less about those fleeting moments of bliss and more about building something that can actually last. So what happens when those foundational elements that respect, trust, communication, what happens when those start to crack?
Imagine a house built on sand, right? Even the slightest storm, the tiniest earthquake, could bring the whole thing down. It's the same with relationships. Without that solid foundation, you become incredibly vulnerable to insecurity, doubts start creeping in, and resentment can build up. It's like a slow leak in a tire. You might not notice it at first, but eventually you're going flat.
And I'm guessing that makes it almost impossible to weather those inevitable storms life throws your way, like job loss, family issues, or even just the everyday stresses of life.
Precisely. It's counterintuitive, but the script points out that healthy couples don't shy away from conflict. In fact, they see it as an opportunity for growth.
Wait, really? Isn't conflict usually seen as a bad thing? I mean, most people try to avoid it like the plague. How can it possibly be a catalyst for growth?
It all boils down to how you approach it. Think about those couples who've been together forever, still finishing each other's sentences. They've probably mastered the art of disagreeing constructively. They actually listen to understand, not just to wait for their turn to respond. They validate each other's feelings even when they don't see eye to eye. And this is key. They work together to find solutions that work for both of them. It's like they're on the same team, even when they disagree.
So it's like that old saying, it's not about avoiding the bumps in the road, but about who you've got in the passenger seat with you.
Exactly. And the script actually gives this great example, talking about how healthy couples will set aside specific times to talk about challenging topics, kind of like a relationship meeting. This structured approach might sound a bit formal, but it helps them stay calm and focused, preventing those everyday disagreements from spiraling into something bigger.
So instead of seeing conflict as something to fear, they see it as an opportunity to learn and grow closer.
You got it. And this is where I think that healthy versus happy distinction really hits home. A happy couple might sweep those tough conversations under the rug to avoid rocking the boat. But a healthy couple, they're willing to lean into the discomfort, knowing that those difficult conversations are what ultimately strengthen their bond.
It's like they're building up their relationship muscles, learning to flex and adapt to whatever life throws their way.
Yeah.
And that's such a powerful image to kind of like end this segment on. It's funny how that works, right?
Yeah.
How facing those challenges head on can actually make a relationship stronger. Speaking of facing things head on, I think it's time we shift gears a bit and talk about the more challenging aspects of relationships, toxic marriages. The script doesn't shy away from this, and it's a good reminder that not all relationships are built to last.
Absolutely. And it's often a slow burn, not a sudden explosion, which makes it even trickier to navigate. The script talks about how these situations often develop subtly, almost like a frog slowly being boiled alive. It doesn't realize the danger until it's too late.
Okay, that's a disturbing but accurate analogy. So in that vein, what are some of those early warning signs, those red flags, that someone might be in a toxic relationship?
Well, one of the first things to look out for is control. Does your partner try to dictate your every move, like who you can be friends with, what you wear, or how you spend your free time? Another red flag is manipulation, where they try to guilt you or emotionally blackmail you into getting their way.
It's like they're trying to isolate you from your support system and make you dependent on them for everything.
Exactly. And remember how we talked about communication being so vital? Well, in toxic relationships, communication becomes a weapon instead of a tool. You get stonewalling instead of open dialogue, blame shifting instead of taking responsibility, and constant criticism eroding your self-esteem.
It's almost like they're sucking the oxygen out of the room, leaving you feeling small and insignificant.
That's a great way to put it. And of course, any form of physical or emotional abuse is a major flashing red light. This includes anything that makes you feel unsafe or belittled, yelling, name-calling, put-downs, threats, the works.
It's heartbreaking to think that anyone would endure that from someone who's supposed to love them. But as the script mentioned, it can be tricky to spot because sometimes these toxic behaviors are disguised as passion or intensity. How can someone tell the difference between, say, a passionate disagreement and something more sinister?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? One way to think about it is this. Healthy relationships, even after a disagreement, leave you feeling energized, like you've cleared the air. Toxic relationships, on the other hand, leave you feeling drained, demoralized, like you're constantly walking on eggshells.
Walking on eggshells. That's such a powerful image, and the script really hones in on that feeling. Can you elaborate on that a bit? What does it actually feel like to be in a relationship where you're constantly on edge?
It's like living in a perpetual state of anxiety, never quite able to relax or be your true self because you're terrified of saying or doing the wrong thing. You start censoring yourself, monitoring your every word and action, always trying to anticipate your partner's mood. It's exhausting, and over time, it chips away at your self-worth, making it even harder to set boundaries or walk away.
It sounds like a vicious cycle, where the longer you stay, the harder it is to break free. So let's say someone is listening to this and realizing, wait a minute, some of these red flags sound painfully familiar. What's the first step towards breaking free from that toxic dynamic?
That's a journey that looks different for everyone, and I can't emphasize enough the importance of seeking professional support if you're in an unsafe situation. But in general, the first step is often simply acknowledging the reality of what you're experiencing.
It's easy to get caught up in denial, isn't it? To make excuses for a partner's behavior or minimize those red flags because you're clinging to the hope that things will magically change.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Facing that truth, however painful it might be, is the only way to break free. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid. It stings at first, but then the healing can begin. And remember, you deserve to be in a relationship where you feel loved, respected, and valued for who you are, not who someone else wants you to be.
That's such a powerful reminder. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of a healthy foundation and the red flags of toxic relationships. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about those who are considering marriage. The script offers some really practical advice for couples who are at that stage, almost like a pre-marriage checklist.
It's like they've distilled years of relationship wisdom into a few key points.
So what are some of those key takeaways? What should couples be thinking about before they say, I do? All right, so for those about to take the plunge, what wisdom does this script offer?
The biggest one they hit this hard is communication. And I don't just mean the how is your day. We're talking deep, nitty-gritty, everything on the table communication.
Finances, kids, career dreams, how to handle those holidays with the in-laws, the stuff some people avoid like the plague.
You nailed it. It's easy to get caught up in the romance, but marriage is also a practical partnership. They use this analogy of a business merger. You wouldn't sign a contract without reading the fine print right.
Makes you think twice about rushing to the altar, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. Laying it all out there from the get-go can prevent misunderstandings and resentment down the road.
Exactly. And it's not just about those big ticket items. It's about establishing those open and honest communication patterns early on. Can you comfortably talk about your feelings, your needs, those secret dreams you might be scared to share? That ability to communicate effectively, that's the bedrock of a strong and lasting connection.
It's like they say, communication is the bridge that connects two hearts. So communication is key. Check. What else is on this pre-marriage checklist?
Well, remember how we talked about life throwing curveballs? The script really emphasizes the importance of flexibility, especially in the context of marriage.
Yeah, because no matter how much you plan life, rarely goes exactly according to script, does it? People change circumstances, change priorities shift.
Exactly. And what might seem important in your 20s might be completely different 10, 20 years down the line. The script actually uses this powerful metaphor of a tree growing together over time. Branches might intertwine, some might need pruning, but the roots, those core values and that deep connection, those remain strong.
So it's not about finding someone who perfectly aligns with you in every single way at this exact moment, but rather about finding someone who's willing to grow and adapt with you through all of life's twists and turns.
Exactly. It's about embracing that journey together, knowing that there will be bumps along the road.
Now, this next point really resonated with me. Self-awareness. It's easy to think of marriage as being all about the us, the partnership, but the script emphasizes the importance of individual growth as well. Could you expand on that a bit?
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself, nurture your own emotional well-being in order to show up fully for your partner.
So it's not selfish to prioritize personal growth within the context of a relationship.
Not at all. In fact, the script argues that it's essential. We all carry baggage, right? Past hurts, insecurities, maybe even some unhealthy relationship patterns we've picked up along the way. And a wedding ring doesn't magically erase all that.
So self-awareness is about recognizing those patterns, those triggers,
Yeah.
and taking responsibility for how they might be impacting the relationship.
Exactly. It's about doing the inner work, whether that's therapy journaling, taking a solo trip to reconnect with yourself, whatever works for you. Because ultimately, the healthier you are as an individual, the healthier and more fulfilling the relationship can be.
It's like building a strong foundation for both yourself and your marriage. So we've covered communication, flexibility, self-awareness. Any other pearls of wisdom from the script before we wrap up?
Oh, they couldn't resist a little sprinkle of romance, right? It's easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day, the bills, the chores, the endless to-do lists, but they emphasize the importance of keeping that spark alive.
Right. Because at the end of the day, we all want to feel loved and appreciated, right? What are some practical ways couples can keep that romance flourishing?
Well, it doesn't have to be grand gestures like a weekend getaway every other week. Often it's the small, consistent things that mean the most. A love note left on the pillow, a spontaneous hug, just because taking the time to really listen after a long day, putting your phone down during dinner, and truly connecting, those small acts of love and appreciation, those are the threads that weave a strong and lasting bond.
It's like they say, love is in the details. And, one of my favorite takeaways from this whole script was that idea that it's not about finding the perfect partner, but about being the right partner.
Ooh, that is good. It's such a powerful shifting perspective, isn't it? Instead of focusing on what the other person can do for you, it challenges you to ask yourself, what can I bring to the table? How can I show up as my best self in this relationship?
It takes two to tango, as they say.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the foundations of a healthy relationship to navigating those inevitable challenges, and even some practical advice for those considering tying the knot. What's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this deep dive into the world of marriage?
That relationships, like anything worth having in life, require effort, commitment, and a willingness to grow both individually and together. But the rewards, that deep connection, that unwavering support, that feeling of truly knowing and being known by another person, that's priceless.
Beautifully said. And for those of you out there navigating the wonderful, messy, and often hilarious world of relationships, remember, you're not alone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those conversations flowing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep loving fiercely.